My husband and I have been married for 21 years. We have 2 adult children, one is in college out of state and the other is in the Navy. When we first got married, my husband was in Navy and we spent the first 10 years of our marriage moving from place to place, wherever his new duty station was. I found it hard to make friends, and I could not keep a job, so I made a difficult decision and decided to be a som. When he got out of the Navy 11 years ago, he took a job and we moved. 3 years in, he got offered a job in another part of the company, however, it was in another state, so we moved again. We stayed there for 6 years. I went back to college and got my degree and began looking for work. I found a job I liked in my field, and 6 months into working, he said he was offered a job with a new company and wanted to take it. But that would mean we would be moving almost 2,000 miles from where we were in a new state. I reluctantly agreed because the new state would have more job opportunities for me and we would be closer to our family, which is something that we have not had in many years. Last night my husband came up to me and said that there was a job opening in his company and he wanted to apply for it. It would mean a pay raise and better hours, but the caveat would be that we have to move again. We have been living in our new state for 3 years. I love it here. I have an amazing job and I am making great money. I finally have friends and am able to socialize. I told him that I am not moving again. Anytime we have to move, he always leaves first and I end up being responsible for selling / packing the house. And I am not doing that again. Our son's college is only 2 hours from here. We can see him twice a month. If we move, that means we would have at least a day's drive and would only be able to do that once or twice a year. Now my husband is upset with me and guilt-tripping me because he claims I do not support him. I told him that was BS because I spent most of my life moving from place to support his career. He told me that I am selfish and he is just trying to provide for us. I told him that we are more than comfortable where we are now, and that if he truly wants to take the job, he will be going alone. My husband and I have been together since I was 15 and he was 17. He joined the Navy right after graduation from high school when he was 18 and I was 16, but had to wait 2 years before we could marry. He works for a company that has plants in 15 states. He is currently in middle management, but if he wants to advance his career further, he would need to go to another plant out of state. Financially, we are more than comfortable. We do not need any more money. My son plans to stay in the place he is after college. We have a great relationship with him and he comes home 1 time a month and we see him 1 time a month. My other son comes home on leave whenever he can and stays with us. We are very close to both of the boys. I talked to my husband again tonight and told him quite firmly that moving again was not an option for me. The area he wants to move has very little jobs in my field and specialty in that area, and I would need to commute more than an hour one way for a job versus the 20 minutes I have here. We are sandwiched between 2 major cities, and if we move we would be an hour from the most major city. I would also have to take a massive pay cut and work a menial job to build a new network to find employment in my field. My husband is disappointed in me for not wanting to leave. He left to stay with a friend because he needs to think. He doesn't understand why I would force him to turn down an opportunity to advance his career further. I told him to take all the time he needs, but I am not moving again. I said I would revisit the possibility when I am ready for retirement in 15 years, but no sooner. I am 18 years old male, I'm a high school senior and proposal season is currently in full swing. I was in my AP Chem class when suddenly an entourage of people entered my classroom with a disabled girl. She has cerebral palsy, that I know. I first saw the posters and the bouquet of flowers she was holding and thought, "Aww, that's sweet of her." Then they revealed the posters and I read my name and was completely taken aback. I literally almost had a anxiety attack. I didn't know what to say at all and the entire class was cheering and people even started filming. I was straight up frozen for a minute and I could feel myself burning up with embarrassment. Of course I wanted to say no, but since it was so public and everyone was waiting for me to say yes, I did and hugged her. Everyone clapped including the teacher and I was mortified. One of my buddies asked me if I was okay. Afterwards, since apparently I looked like I was gonna burst into tears, and I told him I literally did not expect that at all, and I didn't want to say yes. He suggested that I go find her after school or something and explain that to her, and I agreed. Now, this girl is really nice. We had a class together last year and sat next to each other for a majority of it and talked quite a lot. I would say we were friends then, but we haven't spoken more than 2 times this school year, so we've definitely drifted apart. That's why I was completely shocked when she sprung the prom asking on me. Usually, people have their friends make sure that the other is at least aware before doing the asking to prevent situations like this. I was contemplating if I should just bite the bullet and go with her, but decided I just couldn't because it is my senior year prom and I was already starting to plan my asking. There's this girl that I've liked for a couple of months now, and I recently heard from my friends that she likes me back, so I was gonna ask her. So I ended up going to the special ed classroom after school where I found her and asked if I could speak to her outside. I told her everything and how I really appreciated the gesture. But I was already planning on asking my crush to prom, and she was crushed. She started crying really loudly and asked me why I couldn't have just said no, and I said that I didn't want to embarrass the two of us in front of all those people. At this point, one of her aides came out to check on us since she could hear the crying, and the girl told her aide what happened, and she straight up glared at me and said, "That's not okay." Now I feel like absolute shit. It's a complex situation, but I'll do my best to explain. I have a bio son, Leo, 16, from my previous relationship. I married his stepmom, who is a mother of 2 boys, Connor, 20, deceased, and Derek, 12. I've never had the pleasure to meet Connor, who tragically passed away from a motorcycle accident. Derek was so devastated by this loss, and although it's been years, he's still pretty much grieving. I've seen tons of pictures and videos of Connor and made efforts to get to know who he was as a way to share Derek's grief and be there for him, to lend an ear and a comforting shoulder. It's safe to say that Derek and I grew a strong bond in no time. But my son Leo isn't close to Derek. Understandable, because not all siblings and step-siblings are the same. Leo and Derek are different in everything, which isn't a bad thing, but Leo calls himself the brutally honest type and makes insensitive comments about Derek most of the time. They tend to be under the guise of advice. Derek never complained, so I had to step in and tell Leo to stop being insensitive towards his stepbrother, especially with everything regarding Connor and his memory. Leo would say, "Okay, I get it, and I won't do it again." Days ago, Leo wanted to hang out with friends and asked Derek if he wanted to join. Derek agreed and put on Connor's hoodie before going out. Leo commented on the hoodie and called it ugly and asked him to put on something else, but Derek insisted on wearing it or not go. Leo dropped it. Hours later, Derek came home crying with his hoodie in hand. He said Leo and friends cut it into pieces while he was in the bathroom after they convinced him to take it off. I was furious. I asked Leo, and he said it was his friend's idea, then said he had to do it since Derek wears it everywhere, and it looked old and embarrassing. I reminded him who this hoodie belonged to, and he said, "So what? Maybe this will help him move on in life." I told him his birthday was cancelled and his friends aren't welcome anymore. He pitched a fit saying his birthday was a right, not a privilege, and I can't cancel it. He had my ex criticize my decision and wanted to host his birthday party, but I refused because he's grounded, so no party anywhere. She and her family called me awful and ridiculous and asked me to think how Leo will hate me for this, but I insisted he needed punishment for putting his stepbrother through this. I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids. She was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has. Be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot, and we make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who is a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people. Not too long ago, Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face to face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months is brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry and he has a good job too, but I'll admit I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and want to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation then. When we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously I knew what she meant and it was just another dig, but I said,
"Bye,"
and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat and she's furious, well, as much as one can be through text. That I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office and Chris made a comment, "Tell Kat OP and me don't need help but thanks for offering." Henry's really embarrassed and so's Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose and if she knew, she'd have never made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to the family group chat we have saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said that what we did was petty and wrong.